Hi there, this is your narrator, Ali, and I hope you are ready to relax and hear the story of a hard-working farm wife who helps a struggling beetle, only to discover it can speak and offers a strange reward, a well that pumps out gold instead of water. Their sudden fortune lifts them into pride and showmanship, drawing greedy attention that ends in theft and humiliation. In the end, the king beetle's lesson is clear. Good luck lasts longer when met with humility and used wisely. On some hills, the soil is so thin that it seems the rock beneath is always trying to break through, and life there is a kind of stubborn miracle. This story begins on such a hill in New England, where a man and his wife scratched a living from stony ground and counted themselves fortunate if the harvest filled their cellar for even a part of the winter. They were plain people with no riches but their honesty and their willingness to work, until one afternoon by a brook, a woman with aching shoulders turned over a stranded beetle and, without knowing it, turned her own life as well. Chapter 1. Stones, Water, and Weariness. The farm lay on the side of a steep hill, its fields strewn with rocks that pushed up like old bones through the thin skin of earth. A small, low house clung there, 1 story high, its boards weathered by wind and rain, its roof patched where it had leaked too often. Around it, the soil grudgingly gave space to a few brave tufts of grass and a scattering of tough shrubs, but little else would grow near the house itself. The better field, such as it was, lay a little farther down the slope, where the stones thinned and the soil held enough depth to coax a scanty crop from seed. The man who worked this land rose before dawn, his boots crunching over gravel as he went to his rows with hoe and hope. He was no idler. From early light until dusk smeared the sky, he bent his back against the stubborn earth, knowing that each weed he pulled and each furrow he turned meant a little more food, a little less hunger. His wife's work was no easier. The house needed tending, floors swept, bread baked, mendons sewn. She cooked simple meals from simple ingredients, scrubbed clothes in water she had carried herself, and, in the planting and harvest seasons, stood beside her husband in the rows, her hands as calloused as his. No well lay near their door. Water, clear and cold, ran in a brook at the foot of the hill, a 1/4 of a mile away by the winding path. Many times each day, the woman took her pails and trudged down the slope, her heavy shoes sending loose stones skittering. She filled the buckets at the brook, then turned and began the climb back up, the yoke digging into her shoulders, the water sloshing against the worn wood. This task, repeated day after day, year upon year, had carved its own lines into her body. She was thin, her back bent, her hands roughened, yet she bore her burdens without complaint. There was a quiet dignity in the way she moved about her labor, as if she had shaken hands with hardship long ago and accepted its company. Neighbors, when they passed, which was not often, might have said there was nothing remarkable about the couple on the stony hill. They were simply one more pair among many, doing their best with what they had. No one would have imagined that magic, of all things, would find its way to such a place, carried on the tiny feet of an insect. Chapter 2. The Beetle on its Back. It was on an afternoon like many others that the woman, pails in hand, made her way down the familiar path. The sun sat modestly above the horizon, neither harsh nor weak, casting long, slanting shadows across the stones. As she walked, her mind wandered over the list of tasks waiting at home. Bread to knead, beans to sort, a shirt of her husband's to patch at the elbow. Near the bottom of the path, where the ground leveled and small plants dared to grow between rocks, something dark caught her eye. There, in the dust, lay a beetle, its rounded back to the sky, its legs flailing in the air. It rocked and twisted, trying with all its miniature strength to right itself, but each effort only sent it rolling further onto its shell. The woman did not ordinarily spare much attention for the small lives that shared the hill with her. There were too many, and her own work was heavy. Yet something in the beetle's desperate, futile struggle tugged at her. Perhaps it was because she knew, in her own way, the feeling of striving against a weight that would not yield. She set down her pails. Bending slowly, for her back protested, she reached out one work-worn finger and nudged the beetle gently until it flipped. Instantly, it scrambled away, disappearing among the pebbles with a speed that suggested both relief and fear. The woman straightened with a faint smile, took up her pails, and continued to the brook. In another minute, she had forgotten the incident. She did not imagine that the beetle would remember her. Yet the next day, at almost the same place on the path, she saw once more a small dark form lying on its back, legs threshing the air. At first she thought it must be another insect, but when she drew near, she recognized the same glossy shell, the same pattern of spots. Again, she murmured. Perhaps a gust of wind had overturned it, or perhaps the creature had a clumsy habit of misjudging its footing. Whatever the cause, its helplessness was as complete as before. Without hesitation, she set down her pails and turned it right side up. This time, instead of running away at once, the beetle remained where it was for a heartbeat. The woman, bending close, heard something that startled her more than if the stone under her feet had spoken. A tiny voice, clear and earnest despite its faintness, rose from the ground. "Oh, thank you," it said. "Thank you again for setting me upon my feet." The woman jerked upright, her heart leaping. Her eyes flew to the trees, the rocks, the empty path. No one stood there. The only living thing in sight was the small beetle, now poised with its antenna tilted toward her. Her first instinct was to cross herself, the second, to doubt her own ears. But the memory of that small, unmistakable voice remained. Cautiously, she bent again. "Did you speak?" she asked, half expecting to receive no answer and to feel foolish for the question. "Who else would it be?" the beetle replied. "You and I are alone here." If the earth had opened at her feet, the woman could scarcely have been more astonished. She drew back, muttering an exclamation of alarm. Then, slowly, curiosity overcame fear. "But you are only a bug," she said, the habit of plain speech making her blunt, even with a marvel. "Indeed I am," the beetle answered. "Yet even a bug may have something to say when its life has been spared. Twice over. I have enemies enough. The sparrows watch for any of us who lie thus helpless. Had you not turned me, their beaks would have ended my story yesterday, and again today." The woman's eyes softened. She had not thought her small kindness so important. "Why do you come this way each day?" the beetle asked, its minute head tilting. "For water," she replied. "The brook is the only place near where we can draw it." "Is the trip easy?" She glanced up the slope, where the path zigzagged between stones, and the memory of countless climbs tugged again at her shoulders. "It is weary work," she admitted, "but there is no water on the hill." "Then dig for it," the beetle said simply. "Dig a well and set a pump upon it." She shook her head. "My husband tried that once," she explained. "He dug as far as he could, but the ground yielded nothing. It seems the water here has set its heart on running low, not rising high." "Try again," the beetle insisted. "Dig your well and place in it your pump. If the earth denies you water, it shall grant you something better. This I promise in return for your help." Before she could answer, the small creature turned and scurried among the stones, vanishing from sight as completely as a drop pebble. The woman picked up her pails and walked on, mind buzzing as busily as any insect hive. Chapter 3. A Hole in the Earth. That evening, when the man came in from the field, boots caked with dust and face lined with fatigue, his wife placed his simple meal before him, and then, as he ate, told him what had happened beside the brook. He listened in silence at first, his brow furrowing. He was not a fanciful man. His life had been shaped by things that could be touched: stones, soil, seeds, the weight of a hoe. Yet he trusted his wife, and in her voice there was no sound of jest. At length he set down his cup. "If a beetle has truly spoken," he said slowly, "then the world still holds more wonders than our hard days reveal. And if wonders remain, who is to say that water cannot be coaxed from a hill that once refused it?" He rubbed his rough hands together, thinking. "The pump we bought for the first well lies idle in the barn. I have labored without reward before, and labor costs nothing but my own strength. If there is even a chance that we might gain some comfort, or some blessing beyond comfort, by digging again, then I will dig." Next morning, while the light was still pale, he chose a spot near the house and began. The ground there was stubborn, his spade rang against hidden stones, the earth crumbled dry and unpromising. Yet he pressed on, sweat mingling with the dust on his face. Hour after hour he dug, the hole deepening until he could barely toss the shovel loads high enough to clear the rim. When at last he stood at the bottom, looking up at a thin circle of sky, he could see no gleam, hear no trickle. The soil at his feet was as dry as the dust on a path. In the evening, stiff and tired, he climbed out and told his wife. "Perhaps you did not go far enough," she said gently. "The beetle's promise spoke of effort. Maybe it waits just a little deeper." He considered. "I will not be beaten by a few more inches of earth," he declared. The next day he fashioned a longer ladder, sturdy but slender enough to rest within the shaft. He climbed down, the daylight above shrinking, and dug again. The sides of the well rose higher around him, the air grew cooler. Stones jarred his hands more often than soft soil did. He dug until the top of the ladder barely reached the lip of the hole, and yet still no moisture seeped into the bottom. By the time he climbed out, hands blistered, arms shaking with fatigue, discouragement pressed on him as heavily as the hill itself. "There is no water," he told his wife. The beetle's promise was an idle dream. But when she next walked to the brook, pails swinging, she saw the glossy shell glinting upon the flat stone by the path. She set down one bucket and spoke, feeling slightly foolish. "My husband has dug your well," she said. "It is as deep as he can make it, yet the earth holds back its water still." The beetle twitched its antennae. "Has he placed the pump?" "No," she admitted. "We thought that part should wait until there was something to draw." "Then you have not yet obeyed," the beetle replied. "Set your pump in place. If water does not come, something more precious shall." With that, it skittered away, seemingly offended. Back at the house, the woman repeated these words. The man, though weary, fetched the pump from the barn. Together they lowered it into the well, fitting it firmly. Then he grasped the handle. "Do not hope too much," he warned, more to himself than to her. Yet, even as he spoke, some quiet expectation flickered beneath his caution. He began to pump. At first, there was only the asthmatic rasp of dry metal. Then a faint clink. Something small and hard struck the inside of the spout and dropped into the dust at his feet. The woman stooped. Between her fingers lay a round piece of gold, marked with the stamp of the nation. It gleamed even under the thin sun. Another clink followed, and another. Soon, a small shower of coins bounced into the dirt, winking like yellow raindrops. The man's hands faltered on the pump handle. His wife's breath snagged in her chest. For several moments neither moved. Then, almost together, they fell to their knees, gathering the scattered pieces with trembling fingers. They piled the coins in the woman's apron until its worn fabric sagged. Together they hurried to the house, where, at the rough wooden table, they spread out their windfall. The coins were not all the same. Some bore the soft edges and duller color of long use. Others shone crisp and new. Each, however, was real, solid, stamped with the official impress of value. One by one they counted them, their voices almost reverent. $300. It was a sum beyond their longest dreams. Chapter 4. A Night of Golden Plans. For a long while they simply stared at the little gleaming hill upon their table. In all the years of their married life, they had never held more than a few dollars at a time. Most coins passed from their hands as swiftly as they arrived, summoned away by the unending needs of life: seed, salt, cloth, tools. Now the cracked teapot, their only safe place, received the heap of gold. The woman poured the coins in, listening to their sweet chiming against the china. The pot, which had once held comforting tea on cold nights, now held a comfort of another kind. "Take away the pump handle," she whispered suddenly. "If any wanderer were to pass and see what it yields—" The man's eyes widened. "You speak wisely." He hurried back to the well, removed the handle, and carried it into the house, hiding it beneath their bed. Only then did they allow themselves to breathe more easily. Sleep was a stranger to them that night. They lay in their narrow bed, the darkness of the small room thick around them, and talked in whispers. How should they use this sudden bounty? Many wants crowded forward: a new pair of boots to replace the man's cracked ones, a shawl for the woman's thin shoulders, better seed for the field, perhaps even a cow to give milk without having to borrow from neighbors. The man's mind, unused to such possibilities, leapt further. "We might repair the roof," he murmured, "or even build a new house, one with 2 stories, like those in the town. Imagine a room where we could set a proper table." His wife, quieter by nature, thought of smaller comforts: a lamp with a clear chimney, curtains that did not have to be turned and returned as the cloth wore thin, a warm dress for Sunday that was not patched at the elbows. They spoke of giving, too. "The pastor works as hard in spirit as we do in body," she said. "His shoes are so worn that the damp must creep through in every rain. I would like to press one of our gold pieces into his hand, that he might have some ease." The man hesitated. He had already begun in his mind's eye to spend and re-spend the money, fitting it like stones into the wall of a better life. Yet even he felt the tug of gratitude that wished to share. "We shall see," he replied. "We must be prudent. This may be all the beetle ever gives." Morning did not banish their excitement. As soon as the first light seeped into the sky, they rose and went to ensure their treasure was real. The teapot, lifted from its hiding place, clinked promisingly. When they lifted the lid, the gold gleamed up at them, unchanged. They stood for a long moment, simply looking. Then the woman, with a sudden resolve, said, "It is Sunday. We will go to church, thank the Lord for this blessing, and give the pastor part of what we have received." The man frowned thoughtfully. "In the night," he confessed, "I laid out every dollar in my mind. There is none to spare." "We might pump more," she ventured. He eyed her, torn between hope and caution. "Perhaps," he acknowledged, "yet we do not know whether the well still yields. The gold we have counts for something. The gold we hope for is but air." Her desire to give did not fade. "Test it," she said. "If the pump is dry, we will give from what we have. If it flows still, we will not be greedy." So once more he fetched the hidden handle and fitted it. This time they set a wooden pail beneath the spout, large enough to catch a goodly stream. With something like reverence, he began to pump. Clink, clink. The coins came again, spilling into the bucket in a small, steady torrent. When the first pail threatened to overflow, the woman ran to fetch another. But just as she slid it into place, the stream ceased. "That is enough for now," the man said, breathing hard. "We have increased our hoard, and your wish for the pastor can be met." The teapot could hold no more, so they poured the new gold into the wood box, covering it with dry twigs and leaves, an untidy yet effective hiding place. Then they washed, put on their best clothes, patched and plain but neat, and each took a bright coin from the pot to carry to church. Chapter 5. The Pastor's Warning. The walk to the little church in the valley seemed shorter than usual. Their pockets held not only gold, but a new lightness. The sky seemed bluer. The song of the birds sounded cheerier. Inside the church, the familiar wooden pews, the plain windows, the worn hymn books all looked as they had every Sunday. Yet to the farmer and his wife, the place had changed. It now seemed the proper setting for their gratitude. As the deacon passed the contribution box, they waited, almost eager. When it came to the farmer, he held his hand a little higher than necessary, allowing the sunlight to catch the gold coin as it dropped. He could not help it. The pride of giving something so large made his fingers slow. His wife did the same. The faint clink sounded louder in their own ears than all the other coins together. The pastor, watching from the pulpit, blinked. He knew his flock well enough to be surprised at any unusual generosity. When the box was laid upon the pulpit desk, he peered in and saw, amidst the duller copper and silver, 2 bright pieces of gold. For a moment his mind faltered between sermon and astonishment. He managed to finish the service, though once or twice his words drifted from their usual steady course. At the door, as the congregation filed out, he touched the farmer's sleeve. "Stay a moment," he said, "and your wife as well." When they stood before him, he asked gently but directly, "From whence comes this gold?" They had no thought of hiding the truth. The story of the beetle, the second well, and the golden flow tumbled from the woman's lips. The pastor listened with a face that grew more grave with each detail. When she finished, he folded his hands and sat silent for a time. At last he spoke. In old tales, the world once held wonders beyond our understanding, he said. I have often thought such days gone, yet it seems some fragment of that strangeness lingers still. He picked up one of the coins, turning it between finger and thumb. This piece, he continued, is no illusion. It bears the mark of the mint and the wear of many hands. Either it is a trick of spirits, in which case it will dissolve as morning mist within a day, or it has been taken from someone who once owned it. The farmer shifted uneasily. The beetle said it was a reward, he murmured. Creatures without souls do not reckon right and wrong as we must. The pastor replied kindly but firmly. If this be enchanted gold, to spend it would only shift mischief onto others. The merchants would be left with neither coin nor goods. If it be stolen, using it merely passes another's loss through your hands. In either case, you would be part of a wrong, however unintended. What are we to do? The woman whispered, her joy dimming. Wait, the pastor advised. Return home. Do not spend another piece today. If by tomorrow the gold remains, we will know it is real coin. Then you must seek to learn whether any rightful owner can be found, or at least keep it with a conscience alerted, not eased by fantasies. He pushed the 2 coins they had given back into their hands. I too cannot receive what may not be honestly yours. They left the church more slowly than they had entered, the coins heavy in their pockets now. The pride that had carried them like a warm wind down the hill cooled into uncertainty. That night they slept little, turning under straw mattress as shadows moved across the low ceiling. Their dreams, when they came, were tangled with images of vanishing gold and accusing faces. At dawn they rose, hardly waiting for light enough to see. The teapot, fetched and opened, showed its contents undiminished. The wood box, uncovered, still hid the extra heap. It is real, the man breathed, but doubt, once planted, rarely disappears as quickly as it comes. The woman, on her way to the brook, found herself looking over her shoulder for the small sovereign of insects who had started all this upheaval. Chapter 6. The King of Insects. The flat stone by the brook lay cool in the morning shade. Upon it, just as before, sat the beetle, its shell gleaming faintly. "Are you satisfied now?" it asked as she approached. "We are grateful," the woman answered honestly. "Yet we are troubled. Our pastor says that money must belong to someone, and if we did not earn this gold, it may have been stolen from those who did." The beetle's antenna twitched in annoyance. "Your pastor may be a good man," it said, "but he knows little of beetles and less of the secret ways of the ground." She hesitated. "You did not take this money from anyone?" "I took it," the beetle replied, "but not from the pockets or chests of the living. Listen." Its small voice grew in her ears, strangely authoritative. "I am not merely a wanderer upon the path. I am king among insects. My people, ants, beetles, various burrowers and crawlers, move where human steps seldom press. They know the cracks between stones, the hollows where a coin slips from a careless hand unnoticed, the places where, over years, small fortunes of lost pieces gather unseen beneath grass or fallen leaves. For insects, such findings are curiosities only. Gold cannot feed us, cannot shelter us, cannot build our homes. So when my subjects discovered coins, they reported them to me, as is their habit with anything unusual, and I let them lie. What use had we for metal stamped with human faces?" He shifted slightly, the sunlight catching his shell. When you turned me from death, I desired to repay you with something that would ease your burden. I knew where gold lay forgotten, not stolen from houses, but dropped along roadsides, tossed into cracks in jest, buried under tree roots by children who later forgot their hoards. No man expected those exact pieces again. They were as much abandoned as if they had never been minted. So I sent word to every colony, every warren, every hive under my rule. Gather the lost gold, I commanded. Bring it to the hill of stones. My people carried those small, round burdens over moss and under fences, through ant tunnels and along beetle paths. It took them days. While your husband was digging, they were marching. When night fell, they tipped the coins into your new well. What you pump now harms no one. No purse grows light because your teapot grows heavy. You may spend your wealth without fearing that each coin has tears hanging to it. Relief washed through the woman like cool water. Then it is not stolen, she said, shoulders loosening. It belonged to no one who remembered its loss, the beetle answered. Now it belongs to you. Thank you, she whispered fervently. The beetle flicked its antennae in a gesture that might have been a nod. Use it wisely, it advised. Gold can ease labor, but it can also awaken hungers that work kept sleeping. Then it slipped from the stone and vanished among the grasses. The woman walked back up the hill with lighter steps. Her husband, when he heard, shouted with joy. The damp cloud cast by the pastor's warning blew away in the wind of their delight. Chapter 7. Showers of Gold, Eyes of Envy. Free at last to enjoy their fortune, the couple made plans. This time, they said, they would not hesitate. The house needed mending. Their bodies needed rest from constant toil. They would buy what their hands had lacked for so long. They began modestly enough. Into the town they went, pockets bearing several coins, minds filled with long lists. Flour of better quality, sugar to sweeten their tea, a new kettle to replace the one that leaked. These were purchased first. Then came spare shirts, stout boots, a shawl, a new rake, a sack of seed that promised sturdier plants. Each coin that passed from their hands into the shopkeeper's tills felt both wonderful and a little unreal. Yet they were no longer the humble couple who had once stepped carefully around displays, hoping not to break anything they could not afford. Pride, subtle at first, pricked them. When they paid, they made no effort to conceal the bright gleam of their coins. Let them see, the man thought, standing a little straighter. We are not always to be counted among the poor. Word spread quickly in the small town. Neighbors who had scarcely nodded to them before now greeted them warmly. Some asked, with badly hidden curiosity, where such unexpected riches had come from. The woman, in the joy of her relief, answered freely. A beetle rewarded us, she said, telling the tale of the well and the golden pump. A few listeners smiled indulgently, thinking she embroidered some luck with fancy. Others frowned, unsure whether they were hearing folly or blasphemy. But among those who heard were several whose interest lay less in the marvel of the story than in the simple fact that much gold seemed to rest in the hands of two previously poor people. If they spend so freely, one man whispered to another as the couple left a shop, arms laden with bundles, there must be plenty more at home. Aye, the other replied, eyes narrowing. Gold does not like to sit alone. It breeds itself in hidden corners. Temptation thrives where opportunity and desire meet. By the time the farmer and his wife turned their faces homeward, several of the town's less scrupulous men had exchanged glances and quietly slipped away, taking a different road that led, by fields and back lanes, toward the lonely house on the hill. Chapter 8. Robbery on the Hill. The home of the farmer and his wife had never seemed so cheerful to them as when they approached it that afternoon, trailing a small procession. They had hired a handful of boys to help carry their purchases: bolts of cloth, sacks of food, a kettle that gleamed like captured sunlight. Behind came older youths and idle men, drawn by curiosity and the faint hope of seeing more evidence of this unlikely wealth. At the rear, walking carefully, the shopkeeper Guggins bore a folded length of silk, a dress promised to the woman, payment to be settled when they reached the house, for all the coins taken to town had already been spent. The farmer puffed on a cigar that sat uneasily in his mouth, but which he endured for the sake of its air of importance. His hat brim was tipped at what he imagined to be a rakish angle. His wife walked with her chin a little higher, her plain face lit by the unusual sensation of being an object of admiration rather than pity or indifference. They imagined their house waiting, humble but secure, treasures hidden within. Instead, they found the door broken, hanging askew from its hinges. Inside, chairs lay overturned. Drawers stood open, their contents spilled. The wood box had been ransacked. The teapot lay on its side, empty. The little heaps of gold, so carefully hidden, had vanished. For a moment, the couple could not move. The crowd behind them murmured. Some smirked openly, their respect turning, as swiftly as a coin flips, into mocking satisfaction. "So much for riches," someone muttered. Guggins stepped forward, clutching the silk. "You have no money to pay me," he said indignantly. "You have deceived us all with your fine spending." The woman's heart clenched. Behind the loss of the gold lay a deeper loss, the collapse of the brief, bright sense of dignity she had worn like a borrowed cloak. "Go to the pump," she whispered to her husband. "Draw more, quickly." He ran, hope and fear thrashing in his chest. The handle, once fitted and worked, produced only a harsh, hollow sound. No glittering coins jumped from the spout. No weight clinked into his bucket. The well had yielded all it had. He returned to the house pale and empty-handed. The crowd, hearing, broke into scornful laughter. The boys tossed a few stones at the broken fence as they left. Guggins, muttering about false promises, carried his dress away. By evening, the couple were alone with a house in disarray, their new purchases piled awkwardly in corners, and their hearts as bare as the cupboards had once been. Tears came then, not only for the lost gold, but for the shame that lay upon them. They had been poor before, but never humiliated. Now their climb from want had ended in a tumble that left bruises not easily soothed. Chapter 9. The Beetle's Last Lesson. As the sun slid toward the horizon, gilding the stones with a light that felt almost mocking, the woman tied on her apron once again and picked up her pails. The day's sorrows did not change the fact that water was still needed. Down the familiar path she went, steps slower, shoulders sagging. The brook murmured as it always had, indifferent to human fortunes. On the flat stone, as though waiting, sat the beetle. "The well is empty," the woman said, voice thick with anger and grief. "We have pumped it dry and been robbed of all. We are worse off than before." The beetle's small head turned toward her. "You have drawn all the gold my people could gather," it replied calmly. "There was no more to give." "Then we are ruined," she cried. "Thieves have taken every coin we had. Our new things cannot be eaten, and our old debts cannot be paid without money." "I am sorry for your loss," the beetle said, and there was no mockery in its tone. "Yet you must see that the thieves took only what had already been lost to the world before it came to you. Those coins were wanderers long before they rested in your teapot. They will wander again through other hands into other hiding places. Gold has its own restless nature." She sank down on a stone, tears sliding down her cheeks. "What shall we do now? How shall we live?" "What did you do before gold entered your life?" the beetle asked. "We worked," she answered after a pause. "From dawn until dark, we worked." "And did anyone sneak up the hill to steal that labor from you?" She shook her head. "Work is the one thing no thief covets." "Then you still possess the one treasure no robber can take," the beetle said. "Your hands, your strength, your willingness. That is more secure than any chest of coins." She looked up, anger cooling into a sort of weary understanding. The gold had brought comfort, yes, but also pride that did not sit well on her shoulders and trouble that she had not known before. "If we had hidden our wealth," she murmured, thinking aloud. "If we had walked humbly, perhaps we might have kept it longer." "Perhaps," the beetle agreed. "Good fortune is like water from your brook, clear and refreshing in small draughts, but dangerous when it floods. You dipped your hands and drank, which was well. Then you danced in it, and others saw. Their envy drew them like thirsty men." "You cannot change what has passed," it went on gently, "but you can let this loss teach you the shape of contentment. You lived before without gold. You can live again. You are neither better nor worse in your true selves than you were the day before you met me." The woman wiped her eyes. Her back still ached. The path still rose steeply. Yet under the ache, something steady remained, the knowledge that she and her husband could endure, as they always had. "Will you grant us no more?" she asked, though without much hope. "My gifts are spent," the beetle answered. "I am king among insects, not master of fate. I wish you well, but from here your days must be shaped by your own choices." With that, it slipped from the stone and disappeared among the shadows at the brook's edge. She knew somehow that she would not see it again. She filled her pails and turned back up the hill. The weight cut into her shoulders as it always had, yet it felt different now, colored by the memory of brief abundance and the bitter lesson that followed. Closing reflection. The quiet riches of work. In the seasons that came after, the farm on a stony hill looked much as it always had. The roof bore a few new shingles, bought before the robbery. The woman's shawl was thicker. There was a better kettle hanging over the hearth. But the couple's days returned to their old pattern. The man in the fields, the woman at the house, both walking the familiar path to the brook when water was needed. Sometimes, as she passed the flat stone, the woman would glance toward it and remember the gleam of coins in the dust, the strange little voice, the weight of an apron heavy with gold. She did not curse those memories. They had given her a taste of a life in which her back might have bent less, her hands cracked less deeply. Yet they had also shown her how easily pride creeps into the heart when fortune smiles, and how swiftly all that glitters can be carried away. The wonderful pump remained, handle removed, well dry. It stood as a kind of monument, not to wealth, which had passed as fleetingly as a summer storm, but to the choices made when that wealth arrived. The couple learned, in time, to speak of their adventure without too much bitterness, using it instead as a tale to remind themselves and others that gifts, however magical, are not licensed to abandon humility. For it is possible to be poor and yet to walk with a sort of richness, the richness of a conscience at peace, of work honestly done, of kindness offered without hope of return, as when a tired woman first turned over a struggling beetle just because it lay helpless in her path. That small gesture, born of simple compassion, had drawn to her an unexpected harvest of gold. The story does not condemn the gold. It condemns the way pride strutted in its glittering coat. Had the farmer and his wife kept their blessing quiet, sharing it where needed, perhaps their teapot might still have been heavy. But even emptied, they retained something more durable, the capacity to rise each morning and set their hands to the day. And so the tale leaves a quiet counsel. If fortune should ever flow toward you, whether from hard labor, a stroke of luck, or some stranger kindness, receive it with a humble heart. Use it as water is used on stony ground, to ease the hardest places, to nourish what is already planted, not to wash away the soil of character. For wealth that is shouted from hilltops invites envy, but work faithfully done remains yours alone, a treasure no thief can ever steal. For more stories that can help you relax, don't forget to like and subscribe.